This year I decided I wanted to make a MOC for BrickWorld Chicago, so I created Guess Who? LEGO Influencers Edition. Today in this video, I'm going to walk you through step by step how I made this game. This idea actually came to me at last BrickWorld Chicago when I saw a table full of LEGO games on display and I thought of Guess Who, and then I thought, hey, how cool would Guess Who be with LEGO influencers based on that trend on TikTok where everybody's doing Guess Who of their friends. So I wrote that idea down and got to work. So I actually got started with this build process by taking an actual game of Guess Who that I have recreated with my friends on it so I could get some inspiration. I took a 32 by 32 base plate, lined it up with the game, and it worked out perfectly because as you guys can see, it's pretty much the exact same size. The spacing of the game itself also lined up pretty well. Each of the yellow game pieces that flips up and down is actually about 4 studs wide and 4 bricks tall, so this was going easy. I then used some Technic bricks and axles to get the mechanism working and did a test lineup to see if the pieces would actually flip or not when I did that, or if I needed to come up with a workaround. But spoiler alert, it actually worked. So then the next thing was actually just to figure out the spacing so I could figure out how many of the yellow flip tabs I need, which the answer is 4 down and 5 across. I then did the rest of the spacing with the game using a bunch of different plates. You know, when building this MOC, I did know that I would need to place a bricklink order for the parts because I knew I just wouldn't have all of them in my LEGO collection, but I did want to build the prototype of this MOC with parts that I have in my collection first, just so I could get a little bit of a better idea of some of the parts that I would actually need. I could have just done the math and calculated how many parts I need to order, but instead of doing the math, I actually decided that I would try using Studio, which is like Stud.io or Studio, whatever it may be, and actually create the board game digitally so I could create the parts list and then upload that to a Bricklink wanted list and buy the parts a lot easier. Once I had the prototype of the MOC actually digitally built, I then used this time to also create some LEGO lettering from a YouTube tutorial that I found to write Guess Who so I could include that at the front of the game board. Again, I did this just because I wanted to map out the spacing and also get a feel of how it would look on the game board. I will have to say, using Studio for the very first time, I really liked it. It was actually a lot easier to use than I thought it would be, and now I know why so many LEGO MOC builders like using this platform. So now of course with the prototype of my MOC done, it is actually time to get ordering, but before I do that, I want you guys to take a look closely. Something is a little off here. Let's see if you can find it. Anyway, like I said, now that I built the module digitally, it is time to actually order the parts. I imported the list using Bricklink, I made a brand new wanted list, and then started searching for stores that I could order the parts from. I ended up ordering the parts from 2 different stores to get all the ones I needed, both from Canada and both very reasonable shipping costs, so it was a win-win. Once I'd actually gone through and actually placed the order for all the LEGO bricks, I then took a look at the model again and realized that if I didn't do any detailing around the sides of the build and just left it a 32 by 32 base plate, it would be way too plain and it would probably look way too squarey, which doesn't really line up with the actual version of this game as well because it is very curvy and has some textures. So to ensure that I'm not building a boring LEGO build and to ensure that it actually lines up with the official game, I ended up doing a little testing around with some parts that I had in my LEGO collection in the wrong colors and then ordering those additional parts in the right colors from each of the 2 stores I already ordered from just to get a few decorative parts that I think will really help elevate the build. And I felt kind of bad placing another order almost immediately because I should have done my research first, but I think this will make it so much better. So then of course all the parts finally started to arrive and I actually filmed a haul for it for my YouTube channel a few weeks ago. Then of course it was actually time to start the build. I first grabbed the 32 by 32 base plate and started assembling all of the yellow game pieces. I then grabbed each of the base plates to outline where all the game tabs would go. I first started with the red and the blue plates, even adding all of the 1x2 Technic bricks to line it up. But then I started to realize something. Something's not adding up and I was running out of Technic bricks. The blue game board here was completely full, but as you guys can see, I didn't have nearly enough yellow of the game pieces left to build the red game. And I was almost out of parts. It turns out when I built the model on Studio, I built it incorrectly. I built the physical model here to be able to accommodate 5 columns by 4 rows, which means 20 influencers per game board. But when I build the Studio model, I accidentally only built it 4 columns by 4 rows, which means only 16 influencers, which also means that I was 4 game pieces short per board, which means I didn't order enough LEGO parts on Bricklink to actually complete this model. I will admit at first I did panic for a little bit because I was worried that I wouldn't get the build done in time for BrickWorld if I had to place another order for the parts, and I didn't think I had enough parts in my personal collection to actually do the build. But luckily, crisis was averted because I ended up finding all the parts that I needed for the build in my collection already. Whew, that was a close call. Once the crisis was averted, it was time to actually build the player cards. Normally in Guess Who, each board contains the same people for each of the players, but that would have only allowed me to include 20 influencers in this game, so to be able to include 40, I made each board different influencers. I made a mock-up of the Guess Who card games on Photoshop based on ones that I'd actually made for my friends and then I just changed the colors and the sizing and got ready to work. I made one blank one first and printed it off just to make sure it worked good and the sizing looked nice, and once I was happy with it, I went back to my computer and started making everyone's cards. Sourcing everyone's profile pictures here wasn't hard, but it definitely was a little tedious, and I wanted to make sure everybody's profile picture was nice, not blurry, and of course that their name was printed correctly. In fact, the most difficult part of this whole process of making the cards was actually choosing just 40 influencers to include here. There are so many talented LEGO influencers out there, and I wanted to include as many as I could, so I really do apologize to anyone who couldn't be included here. I would have loved to include you, and maybe I'll even get to remake the game in the future and get to include a few more people who weren't included this time, but again, I'm really sorry if you don't see your name here. I then printed off each one of the player cards onto glossy photo papers and manually cut each and every card out with the scissors because I wanted to ensure that I got the lines as straight and as accurate as possible. Once each card was cut out, I then pasted each of these onto the yellow brick flip tiles that I made. I know, I glued Lego bricks. Please don't come at me for it. I want to keep this game for as long as I can, and I wanted it to be as durable as possible, so I honestly didn't know any workaround solution without gluing the pieces down. So after all the bricks were glued, I then began to assemble the board. I attached each of the yellow parts to the 2 Technic pins and 2 Technic bricks of their respective color and started placing them along the board. The placement of these yellow bricks were mostly random, although I did try and space out similar content creators so it wouldn't make the game too easy or too difficult. Once I put everything in place, I wanted to make sure it all worked and it all looked good. And once I confirmed that, I started building the rest of the game board. I started by creating the exterior detail of the parts for the detailed with the slopes because I knew they would have to be connected manually to the outside with Technic bricks. This part here was actually a lot of trial and error, just trying to figure out where I needed the Technic bricks and pins to go to hold everything in place. So once I finished with the red board, I then moved over to the blue board and did the exact same thing. I can't remember if I mentioned it or not, but I was actually missing a bunch of the blue slopes that I needed for the exterior of this build just because those 2 Bricklink stores didn't have them. So I did place an order at a 3rd Bricklink store to get those parts. However, they just hadn't arrived by the time I started building the MOC. So while I wait for those parts to arrive, I did do the most I can, and for now, I am really happy with how this detail turned out. I think it actually makes the build just look so much better, and I have no regrets whatsoever. Once all the exterior detailing was all done, I then started filling in the blanks of these models with bricks of the exact same color. The exterior of the model did need the Technic bricks, but the inside could just use regular generic bricks, so that's exactly what I did. Of course, when it was time to do the lettering, at first I thought I would do it within the base layer and just have the tiles flush with it, but then I decided it would be much nicer to add a layer of plates underneath to push up the lettering and add the tiles on top of that so that the tiles for the lettering were not flush with the tiles on the actual game board, and I have to say it looks so much better. After I finished adding the plates and of course tiling the entire MOC, I added the Guess Who lettering with the Lego tiles right on the front of the MOC and then repeated all of these steps with the blue model, keeping everything, including the lettering, the exact same. And finally at last, my MOC Guess Who Lego Influencers Edition is complete. I personally had a ton of fun building these models. I am very happy with the design and the functionality of them. I think they really turned out great, and I absolutely cannot wait to display them at BrickWorld. I have not had a MOC at a LEGO convention since 2017, so it has been a long time for me, and I've been wanting to get back into the MOC building game, but I wasn't quite sure how to do it, so this was a nice easy step and an easy introduction back into building some LEGO MOCs, and it got me really excited to definitely make some more. As I said, really happy with how this game turns out, and I hope a lot of people will like it as well and have some fun trying to find their favorite LEGO influencers here on the Guess Who board. I also printed additional game cards as well, so this game can actually be played, which I will explain a little bit more tomorrow. Here's also just a little overview of all the influencers that I did include. You'll have to see if you can spot some of your favorites, but once again, I'll go through everyone in a lot more detail in the next video. Anyway, you guys, thank you so much for watching today's video where I walked you through step by step how I built my custom Guess Who games for BrickWorld Chicago 2024. I am super excited for how these games turns out, and I cannot wait to show them off at the LEGO convention, and of course cannot wait to show you tomorrow's video where I walk you through step by step how you can actually play this game, and who knows, maybe we'll even get to play at BrickWorld Chicago. That could be a ton of fun. Thanks again so much for watching today's video. If you did enjoy, don't forget to like, comment, and of course subscribe, and I'm looking forward to seeing you all here in the next one.